What if the greatest leader you've ever seen never tried to lead anyone at all? No speeches, no control, no rules forced onto others, just a boy chasing freedom, who somehow became the center of loyalty, trust, and belief. That is the paradox of Monkey D. Luffy in One Piece. Because Luffy doesn't lead through authority, he leads through freedom. And in a world full of control, fear, and power struggles, that kind of leadership changes everything. From the very beginning, Luffy makes one thing clear. He doesn't want to conquer people. He doesn't want to rule over them. His dream is simple yet profound: to be free, to become the Pirate King, not as a title of domination, but as a symbol of ultimate freedom. And this distinction is critical, because most leaders are driven by control. They want influence, obedience, structure. But Luffy wants none of that. He doesn't seek to control others. He seeks to be himself, fully and unapologetically. And ironically, that is exactly why people follow him. Luffy's leadership begins not with strategy, but with authenticity. He is completely aligned with who he is. He doesn't hide his intentions. He doesn't manipulate situations. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not. And that level of honesty creates something rare: trust. Because when people know exactly who you are, they don't have to question your motives. They don't have to guess your intentions. They can feel it. And feeling creates connection. This is why characters from all walks of life, warriors, outcasts, royalty, rebels, gravitate toward Luffy. Not because he convinces them, but because he reveals something within them. He reminds them of freedom, of possibility, of a life beyond the limitations they've accepted. One of the most powerful aspects of Luffy's leadership is his respect for individuality. He doesn't try to change the people who join him. He doesn't force them into roles that fit his vision. Instead, he allows them to be fully themselves. Roro Zoro is free to pursue his path of strength. Nami is free to navigate her own ambitions. Sanji is free to hold on to his values. Luffy doesn't reshape them, he supports them. And this is where his moral leadership becomes clear. Because true leadership is not about creating copies of yourself. It's about creating an environment where others can become the best version of themselves. Luffy doesn't give long speeches about values or principles, but his actions consistently reflect a strong moral compass. He stands up against injustice, not because it's strategic, but because it feels right. Whether it's challenging corrupt systems, protecting the weak, or standing beside his friends no matter the cost, Luffy acts from a place of instinctive morality. And that instinct is powerful, because it's not calculated, it's genuine. There's a moment that defines this perfectly. When Luffy confronts systems of oppression, he doesn't negotiate with them. He doesn't try to work within them. He challenges them directly, not out of rebellion for the sake of rebellion, but because he cannot accept a world where freedom is taken from others. And that's the core of his leadership. He doesn't just want to be free himself, he wants others to experience that freedom too. But here's what makes his leadership different. He never forces that belief onto others. He doesn't demand that people follow him. He doesn't expect loyalty, and yet, loyalty forms around him naturally. Because people don't feel controlled, they feel inspired. They choose to stand beside him. And choice creates stronger bonds than obligation ever could. Another important aspect of Luffy's leadership is his emotional intelligence, even if it doesn't appear that way on the surface. Luffy may not articulate emotions in a complex way, but he understands people deeply. He senses pain, recognizes struggle, and responds in ways that meet people where they are. He doesn't overanalyze, he connects. And connection builds trust faster than logic ever will. This is why his crew is willing to go to extreme lengths for him, not because they are ordered to, but because they believe in him. They've experienced his consistency, his willingness to stand by them, his refusal to abandon them, no matter how difficult the situation becomes. Luffy's loyalty creates loyalty. And that's one of the strongest principles of leadership. What you give is what you receive. There's also something important about how Luffy handles fear. He doesn't ignore it, but he doesn't let it control him either. When faced with overwhelming odds, he doesn't retreat into doubt. He moves forward, not because he's fearless, but because his desire for freedom outweighs his fear of failure. And that mindset is contagious, because when people see someone act with that level of conviction, it challenges their own limitations. It makes them question what they believe is possible. And that's how influence spreads, not through force, but through example. Luffy also embodies the idea of living in the present. He doesn't dwell on the past or obsess over the future. He experiences life fully, moment by moment. And this presence allows him to act decisively, without hesitation. It allows him to enjoy the journey, not just chase the destination. And that joy, his ability to laugh, to celebrate, to remain light even in heavy situations, creates an energy that people are drawn to. Because in a world filled with pressure and struggle, someone who can still find joy becomes a source of relief, a source of balance. But make no mistake, Luffy's leadership is not without weight, because with freedom comes responsibility. Every choice he makes affects the people around him. Every decision carries consequences, and over time, we see Luffy begin to understand this more deeply. He realizes that being the one people believe in means he has to stand firm, even when it's difficult, even when it hurts. And this is where his growth becomes clear. He doesn't lose his sense of freedom, but he begins to carry it with awareness. It's understanding the impact of your actions and still choosing to act with integrity. Luffy's journey teaches a powerful lesson. Leadership is not about control. It's about example. It's about being so aligned with your values that others are naturally inspired to follow. It's about creating space for others to grow while staying true to yourself. He shows that you don't need to be perfect to lead. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to fit a certain image. You just need to be real. Because at the end of the day, people don't follow titles. They follow truth. They don't follow control. They follow freedom. And Luffy is living proof that when you chase your freedom fully, you don't just change your life. You inspire others to change theirs too.